And the CCTV network, basically we were provided over 29 weeks with any incident type that was described as an alcohol-related assault. We were given the free text for that as well. Basically the CAN system, that's the monitor room. You can see the keyboards. They watch something on the footage, they go to the database. This is an alcohol-related assault, this is a drinking in public, this is a swimming after hours in the swimming pool. They flag that and then they describe it in a free text note, and they've also got a number of other fields as well. So we got the text from the rich notes field from late March to mid-October, and we're still actually getting that, but for the purposes of this, there was a total of 29 weeks. We also conducted 18 hours of observation over 3 sessions. We were assisted by 4 different camera operators for that, and that included observations during midweek business hours and also peak times during the weekend evenings. And while we conducted them, we had open-ended questions with the camera operators relating to their length of employment, the provision of training, and the reasons for their initiation of monitoring for different situations. 116,640 minutes are captured by the cameras every day. And I'll just talk here about, 18 hours of observation by 2 researchers doesn't capture much of that. Key features of the system are that it's staffed 24/7, 1 operator on all the time, 2 operators on during peak times. It's got real-time communication, 2-way radios with venues and street security. It's council contracts it out to an external security provider, which is the most common Australian model, as far as I know. The research is a few years old on that one, but so council contracts it out. They also contract out street patrols by security as well during the peak hours. So they also have a team, and it ranges between 1 on Thursday afternoon, Wednesday morning to 8 during peak weekend times. They walk around dealing with different issues that happen and arise. So real-time radio communication with them and also with the venue security as well. That's a key feature, and that's in line with good practice. There's also real-time communication with the police communications room. With that, however, they have to ring up the police communications room, but they do have a direct live monitor feed that goes through to them at all times, and they also have the ability to patch through another monitor feed all the time as well. And they're all late generation pan, tilt and zoom cameras. That area I showed you, that's got 81 cameras in it. Basically it's got about 78 cameras. There's another 3 that go up the esplanade up to the end of it. So it's more or less saturation level, but there's still blind spots, very small blind spots. But the aims and the goals of the Regional Council CCTV policy are to protect citizens and protect property, where personal safety comes ahead of property protection, and to identify and prevent illegal or inappropriate behaviour in the Cairns CBD which has the potential to alarm or threaten citizens or to result in the damage to property or the good order, and to permit the control provision of information by Council to the Department of Emergency Services, so police, ambulance and fire, so that whole evidentiary thing as well. Most of their requests for footage come from the police, and secondarily it's defence lawyers. In fact, basically all of their requests for footage come from them. I'll just briefly talk on this, although I'll talk a bit more about it later, but as a result of, we've been engaged to do contract research by the Cairns Regional Council, and it started off around the data integrity in their CCTV database. It's moved into, and this is where my research is really focused at the moment, but how to use the CCTV network in the prevention of assaults, because with the real-time communication and the continuous monitoring, there seems to be some potential. We looked at 169 records, which comprise the footage and also the database records. Of those, 30 were alcohol-related assaults or assaults in the late night entertainment precinct or the nighttime economy area. So we looked closely at them. There were 13 incidents that happened too quickly for camera operators to direct on-the-ground security to go and intervene. There were 12 incidents where the camera operators did alert ground security, who got there in time to limit the scale of violence and prevent it from going on. And there was one in particular, this is also the subject of another paper that coming out, or being submitted, sorry, where it happened outside of the main mustering point and outside of all of the sort of the dense area of the venues, and so that would have continued to happen. And this guy got knocked to the ground by two others, and they were just about to start kicking him, and security were there. So that happened within 3 minutes of the first thing happening. You know, Queensland Police Service have got the One Punch Can Kill campaign, which is quite widely promoted up there, and that's the truth. You know, there's a guy who died in Cairns a few years ago at the McDonald's. He said something to the wrong person, who then hit him. He fell over, hit his head, died. So anything that can limit the scale of violence has massive benefits. There were 5 incidents where, and there's also another 3 incidents within those 12 incidents where, with potentially with better training and some more situational awareness, and there's good research that says that camera operators can view crime sequences of behaviour that lead up to crime events and differentiate them between neutral sequences or sequences that are closely matched to that as well. So the next phase of this, we've got a training workshop with the camera operators in the next couple of weeks, so it's just testing with them whether they think it's possible to look at some of this body language behaviour and start intervening earlier along those lines. And the Youth Coalition, Dr. Justin Barker, I think the Youth Coalition from the ACT, did the Dutch Courage report last year, where they interviewed a number of patrons to the late night entertainment precinct, who divided alcohol-related assaults into 4 stages, which is basically the victim selection, the baiting or the interview. It's like, come on, you know, what's wrong with you? The actual violence itself, and then the aftermath. So we're looking at seeing if there's potential by the camera operators to intervene in those first 2 stages, the victim selection and the baiting area. So that's interesting, and anecdotally by the camera operators so far, they say they could do it. You know, they've had basically have a certificate to operate the technological equipment, and then the rest of it's learnt on the job. So, with a bit of a digression there, on the way at the end, that's the findings of our feasibility study. Also, a really brief overview of it. We're repeating that this year. The feasibility study was funded by the National Drug Law Enforcement Research Fund. I know I said that before, but we're very grateful, and they do great work. The feasibility study, the intervention component study now is funded jointly by the Queensland Injury Prevention Council and the Alcohol Education and Rehabilitation Foundation. So the idea of that is to repeat the data collection, overcome some of those inconsistencies and methodological difficulties in the data collection, the coordinated data collection, and evaluating the processes of how agencies choose to take up different interventions that are being provided to them. So basically for that we did a document, went through quite a lot of research literature, focused it down. These are interventions that have worked in different jurisdictions, then focused that on, for example, for council, here's interventions that have been shown to have an effect on alcohol-related violence through community crime prevention, safer communities type partnerships. Here's stuff that's worked for the CCTV stuff. Here's stuff that's worked for the police. Here's stuff that's worked for venue owners, managers, glassees and bar staff, as well as security. Put that all into one document and handed it to the different stakeholders during focus groups. And so we're also doing another round of interviews in May as well. And there's a couple of ones that, so that was the best we could do, basically. It's all research-based interventions that have been shown to have an effect, and offering that to people. And there's a lot of overlaps between different agencies. There's some too, particularly police ones, which in the focus groups we'll talk more specifically about those ones that may not have been included in the intervention document because they're because. The other 2 things, I've already touched on the evaluation of the CCTV effectiveness. The other one that is interesting, and I think that's the next slide, is the private security training. It's my colleague Charmaine Hayes-Yonkers. She's doing her PhD into venue security, the potential to build a capacity for assault and injury prevention through venue security stuff. She's had a paper published recently on that, and she's working on one, basically a literature review documenting best or good practice for venue security in preventing these sort of assaults, then matching the CANs or mapping the CANs processes against that. There's limited limited stuff on how venue security providers can act. You know, they're at the front line, they're there all the time, and there's been very little research into it. And as a result of our project, Charmaine was invited by 2 venues. There was an initial sort of pilot one to go and deliver training to venue security providers around some of these areas. So she just knocked up a 2-hour workshop that ended up going for 5 hours because of questions by security and management. And then she was invited back to do another one to security providers, venue management and glassies and bar staff around that. And there's also been interest by other venues as well. So we offered that as part of the project itself, but it does, you know, it takes time to develop a workshop and deliver this training and all of that sort of thing. So they've certainly talked about being willing to pay, but when it gets down to dollars, they're a bit sort of wary. But it's interesting that the industry has recognised that this is a deficit and they're prepared to enter into negotiations around actually getting some of this paid training. None of this stuff is covered in the regulated training under the Queensland Security Providers Act, and it's all basically around the psychosocial and biopharmacological stuff. The impact of alcohol on people's brains and behaviour was something that security providers, you know, apart from what they'd picked up on the job, just didn't have any real awareness of. And some of the research there, again, was a great benefit to them. So yeah, Charmaine has been delivering training into the role and potential, and she's doing a PhD into that. So, and that's her baby. That's about all I know about it, except we did some stuff on it together. But the CCTV one has been, so we're working on a continuous quality improvement methodology, and it started with the data integrity. That was interesting, and that kicked off just basically through when we were given the de-identified text around each incident. There were just some really glaring stuff that had to be addressed. So we fed that back to the management of security, you know, using for regular users of the space, using nicknames and things like that, which was gone once that was brought to the attention that, you know, that was a problem. It was gone, you know. So again, it was giving feedback to the actual camera operators and to their management about these are some of the practices that you could be using, these are some of the practices you should be using under legislation, and some of this other stuff. So again, it's feeding back that information to the stakeholders.